So you lads want to hear the story of why they call me the Vampire Slayer. Now this story isn't for the faint of heart, so if you're too much of a coward, you might want to step away. This all started when I was 17 years old, living in the small village of my birthplace. I had lived with my mother, father, and little sister, who was only 6 years old. My father, on the day the first life was taken, was out hunting with 5 of the other men in our village. I was out at night helping the old woman who lived next to us with her fireplace, making sure she didn't freeze to death. As I was leaving her home, I heard what sounded like a struggle, as if someone was being choked to death, trying to escape the grasp of a grizzly bear. I cautiously approached, which turned out to be Charles House, our village preacher. I circled around his home, trying to get a look through a crack in a window, and all I saw was a figure standing in the darkness. Next thing I see is a swarm of bats flying through the window, blowing open the wooden covers, then disappearing into the night sky. I jumped into the window, grabbing a lantern, desperately trying to light it as I'm shaking with fear. As the light slowly illuminates his home, I see Charles, lying still, blood staining the floor, as I try not to throw up at the sight of his guts hanging out of his body. I say a quick prayer and leave out his front door, quickly heading to my uncle's house. I tell him what happened. He tells me to stay with my mother and sister, as he would gather a few of the others to go investigate. The next day we had a village meeting in the church. What my father's brother described was a bite mark on the preacher's neck. The bite mark wasn't human, but that of what we only believed was pure legend. The people of my village were in complete shock, and fear echoed throughout our valley. It sends a powerful message to kill a preacher, a man of God. This abomination seek not only to kill our village entirely, but to torture us, tear us away from our God. The same day, my father and his hunting party returned and were let in on all the details, but they also lost a life during their trip. A man was killed and hung in a tree by an unknown creature that left the same bite mark on the man's neck. My village decided to have lookouts and watchmen to keep the night safe. A week had passed since the first incidents, for good reason too. That time of year is the coldest and the darkest, as majority of the day is night, and temperatures reach below zero. As the days went on, it became harder and harder to stay outside for prolonged times. The visibility was at most 20 meters. Then, more tragedy struck. We had gotten a snowstorm and my father was on lookout along with 3 other men. It was late in the night. I was awake keeping watch over my family and keeping an ear out for the others outside, until I heard that same swarm of bats. I heard the alarm bell ringing, then pure silence. It wasn't until the morning when we only found 2 of the bodies, and my father wasn't among them. Him and another went missing. The snow had covered a majority of the blood, but the proof was still there that this creature killed again. My uncle took us into his home, as it was bigger, and the more eyes and people the better. It was my turn to be on lookout. I had to swallow my pain and fear and protect my village with pride, as my father did. I was out on the south end of our village, near my old house. My uncle lived opposite on the northern end. I was up on the lookout post when in my home I heard something fall. I'm not sure why, but instead of alerting for help, I decided to investigate myself. Probably revenge was too overwhelming, and I felt that I needed to avenge my father and all the others who have suffered death by this creature's hands. I carefully walked to my home, hearing only my footsteps in the well-packed snow. As I approached the door, I slowly creaked it open and held my lantern into the darkness. I saw a rat scurry underneath the floorboards. Feeling somewhat relieved, I walked in to pick up a few pots that had fallen on the ground. I heard the most blood-curdling screech directly behind me. As I quickly turned around, I saw the same gray-skinned creature that had the face of a half-man, half-bat. Without thinking, I pulled out my wooden stake and charged the creature, aiming directly for its heart. In that same moment, I was struck by its arm and sent flying against my wall. I had dropped my weapon and was pinned against the wall, being stared down by its cold, dark eyes. The stench from its warm breath that reeked of death was almost unbearable. I reached for a sack I had on my waist and pulled silver flakes and blew them into the creature's face. It dropped me and stumbled backwards in pain, letting out ungodly noises. I immediately went to grab my wooden stake, and as I did so, the creature bolted for the back window. I scrambled to stand up, charge along with it, and as it blew open the wooden panels, I grabbed its leg, holding on with all I could. I whispered a prayer to my father and my village, as I thought this was going to be the end of me. The creature took flight as I was still holding on to it. Slowly losing my grip, I pulled a knife out and stabbed the creature in the back to pull myself closer to its torso. The creature let out another scream and began to fall to the ground. Luckily, the snow had broken my fall, and as I struggled to get up, the creature lied there, letting out heavy breaths. I grabbed my wooden stake and struck the creature in the chest, killing it for good. I fell back, and all I remember is the alarm bell ringing. As I slowly dozed off to the noise of people yelling my name, Arthur. I awoke in my uncle's home, surrounded by my family crying. I, in a dazed, asked what's wrong, and my uncle exclaimed that this is impossible. I asked what's impossible. He said that I was bitten by the slain creature, and I should be dead right now. Must have been sometime in our free fall the creature bit me as a last measure to trade lives. But as it would seem, I survived, and all it left me with is proof that I killed a vampire.